You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Hello, Aquaba. Good evening. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to Professor James in the studio. Good evening to everyone that would be joining this conversation for tonight. As you can see, I'm already filled with guilt all over because this lateness is due to me. You know, Professor James Moore is always on time, but due to some motherly, womanly kind of stuff, I couldn't get here on time. So I'm really apologizing if you've been waiting. But, today is Friday and we have a very important discussion that we've been suspending for all this while, because actually we wanted the best of the best knowledge out of the situation in South Africa. So our topic for today, as we already announced, is South Africa Today. And actually we want to focus on looting. We see this looting going on, and there's a lot of conversation online or on the media about the situation in South Africa. Now, no one wants to talk about the root cause. No one talks about the history of South Africa, the whole miseducational media that we have out there. They keep punching only on a particular colored people, Africans in particular, that are doing the looting business. But they forget to know that this looting started generations ago, and even those that are looting currently don't just have the face that I have. It's the same story like we had at the Capitol Hill city in the US. And that's why we have our Professor Dr. James here, our expert, the biggest, the best that we all know. He's going to crack down the real thing. He's going to give it to us the way we want. No dilution, right? It's not going to be purple, blue, white, black. It's going to be just that, what we want to hear. So I'm so excited because this is a very complex topic. South Africa, like we say, just a lot of colored people out there, people that just infiltrated this land and never will want to leave, and causing all that trouble that we have out there. How can South Africa become a peaceful, independent country that would regulate their laws and their policies depending on the mixed population that they have? That's the challenge that Africans are looking to answer, and we want to get into the root cause with Professor James Moore. So thank you for joining. If you are ready, we are ready. Naisha is ready. Patrick is ready out there on the continent. And I also have my friends right here with me. They're all watching us live today because this topic is a topic we must deal with it. Good evening, my able prof, my king.
Good evening, Queen Mother. How are you? South Africa is a very complex situation.
Yes.
Because we've created so much recent myth around it. It was supposed to be the white and black ideal utopia after Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. And that has never been farther from the truth then and now. If Africans had paid attention and defended the integrity of Winnie Mandela's position, South Africa would not be in the position it's in today. You see, we constantly want to marry our murderers and be the wives of our rapists and be the family member of our robbers. No other people in the world do that insanity. Did the Jews go back to Germany to find their Nazis counterpart to marry? Did they bring the Nazis with them in an equality basis to Israel? Did they? But apartheid was worse than what happened in Nazi Germany because it lasted hundreds of years longer. The murder, the mayhem, the destruction of Black people, the stealing of their wealth, the raping of their women, the beating the brains up of Stephen Biko. And then we come with our European Christian foolishness called reconciliation, peace and reconciliation. And so we let all the murderers, as long as you've confessed to your murder, you can go home free. So Stephen Biko's murderer in front of Biko's mother tells how he bashes that boy's brains out of his head. And then he gets to go home to his wife and his children because Bishop Tutu led this foolish, false Christian concept of peace and reconciliation. They didn't have peace and reconciliation for the leader of oh my goodness, my West African, Liberia. They sent him to The Hague to be tried. The only people that gets tried in the world court in The Hague are African peoples. Nobody from Zimbabwe. Ian Smith and all the white murderers were taken to The Hague and tried for crimes against humanity. Nobody from South Africa committing all of the crimes of apartheid was taken to The Hague and tried for crimes against humanity. They were all forgiven and allowed to keep all of the mines, all of the mineral wealth of Africa, 72% of the best farmlands. South Africa is as segregated and as apartheid today as it was when Nelson Mandela was in prison. So we need to stop lying to ourselves. That's the first thing. The lies need to stop. The Western media panacea of South Africa, when the poverty rate has not gone up, it's gone down. So I'm gonna give you some statistics. There's the real problem. South Africa is 58.4 million people. Roughly 47.4 million are Black. Asian and Indians form the smallest part of the population. They're 1.45 million people. But they control much of the trade to the so-called non-South African world. They control a significant part of the wholesale industry and a big part of the retail industry in South Africa, which they were able to acquire as the middlemen for the white apartheid rulers during the period we called apartheid. But I say South Africa is still in apartheid. It just has Black managers now and policemen instead of white ones. The so-called colored population makes up about 5 million of the 58 million. And the majority of them live in the Cape area with their white fathers and mothers and cousins. And the Cape area is 90% white. You know, we're relegated to the slums they created during apartheid, the Johannesburg and so forth. You know, whites make up 4 million of the 58 million South Africans. You know, and the Indians, as I said, 1.4. So according to the 2017 government audit, 72%, I'm telling you, this is why you got rioting in South Africa. It has nothing to do with Zuma. That was just the spark. 72% of the nation's private farmland is owned by whites, who make up 9% of the population, but they control 72% of the farmland, right? And so here we go again. The White Africana interest group saying that, well, Blacks own, that 24% of South African land is owned by the government or the state. And then 34% is owned by the Blacks. So what 34% are they talking about? The land that you can't plant anything on? The slums that you built during apartheid, that you dump us in that we can't get out because we don't have the educational skills, you know? So Blacks, who make up 75% of the population, and whites make up 13% overall. But yet, when we look at the employment, let's just look again at some of these percentages. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you got the coloreds, you got, and people say, oh, well, they've gotten rid of the race thing in South Africa. No, they haven't. Coloreds still stay with colors. Whites still stay with whites. Asians and Indians still stay with Asian and Indian. The Malay, the Indians, the Chinese, they stay together. And the Black South Africans stay together. And then we are divided because the whites have divided us. The Zulus against the Xhosas against the Shona. And so we are divided among ourselves as the apartheid regime had divided us. So we got the Zulu, 21%, the Xhosa, 17%, the Sothos, 15%.
Mm.
And this all started way back with the Portuguese coming in 1488, but they didn't make any permanent settlement. When the Dutch came in 1652, that's when apartheid really had its birth.
Mm.
And if you want to find where the safest city in South Africa is, you go to Oriana in the Cape, which is 97% white and 2% colored and 1% black. You want to find where the most dangerous city is, then you go to Johannesburg, which is majority black. You know? And we're still dealing, sadly, with the 1913, listen to this now, the 1913 Native Land Act. Much of its provisions are still in place. Even though President Ramaphosa is fighting now since 2019 to get new land reforms, and even under Zuma, there was some land reforms, meaning they gave land back to the poor black people who the land was taken from, but with no money to develop, no equipment, no agricultural training and skills so that they can compete with the big white farming conglomerates, which control 72% of the farmland. How the hell is that going to work? So what we're dealing with is a situation in South Africa right now where the unemployment rate for blacks in South Africa is 36.5%. The unemployment rate for black women in South Africa right now is 38.5%.
38.5.
38.5. The South African jobless number, they have 7.2 million people unemployed. How the hell are you going to run a country with this kind of economic disparity on the majority elements of your country? Unemployment among the blacks is 36.5%, among the whites, 8.8%, among the coloreds, it's about 25%, and the Indian and Asian, the unemployment is about 11%. So who's controlling the retail? When you come to businesses in South Africa, black only control, the blacks, with the overwhelming majority, control 3% of the economics in South Africa. So how you may be the president, but if you don't own and control the wealth, what are you going to do to build a country? On the Johannesburg stock market, blacks own 27%. Yet black makes up 80% of the active participant in the economic, meaning the buying things and shopping and so forth. But we own 27% of the stock market, and we only control 3% of the economy, whereas the white controls 67%, while they're only 9% of the population. So that's what, and even when we talk about management positions, the top level management position, blacks in South Africa only have 14%. The majority is white, 67%. Even at the mid-level position where blacks are having jobs at 35%, the whites are still at, blacks at 42%, whites at 35%. That's the mid-level position. But in these companies, the companies are owned 90% by whites. So You want to know now why people are rioting in the streets of South Africa? They don't have any jobs. They don't have any businesses. The majority of the small businesses in South Africa, only 27% is owned by Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the retail business and the trading industry was controlled by the Indians. That was under apartheid. They gave the Indians that piece of the economy. We were simply the slave workforce. The whites, Dutch, and British controlled the mines, and they didn't turn any of the mineral resources over to this new South African state to finance the new government. I don't know what the back alley or backroom deals are on how much of the diamond and the gold and the cobalt and the tungsten and so forth is going towards infrastructure development in South Africa that would produce jobs for millions, but it doesn't appear to be. What seems to have occurred, they've paid Black men to be soldiers and policemen to manage the apartheid victims in the reservations called Johannesburg. And in the areas of KwaZulu, it isn't much better because that's where much of the riots are. And because of the orientation and the socialization that the apartheid regime put in place as education, you have Black South African attacking Blacks from Mozambique, attacking Blacks from Zambia, attacking Blacks from Namibia. These were the people who helped you fight your war to get free of apartheid, and these are the people you kill in your streets because they come there looking for jobs. Have you lost your mind? It was the frontline countries that free South Africa, not South Africans. You didn't go to war on the streets of South Africa. Talk about Frelimo, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the SWAPO. Had SWAPO not slaughtered the South African army, you never would have seen a Nelson walk out of prison alive. And yet the Namibians come there for a job and you kill them in the street while you party and dance with your Asian, Indian, Dutch, British murderers and call them your South African brothers. What is wrong with you? It's called ignorant of history, lack of knowledge of self, no control over your own identity process. With all of the history of the Zulu waging wars against Britain and the Dutch. And then today the Zulu can't sit down and make peace with the other African ethnic nations that make up South Africa so that you can put the demands on the corporate structures and the international banking interests that finance apartheid in partnership with Nazi Germany and is still running apartheid using the same principles of Nazi Germany, and you can't even see it, and you wonder why those kids in the street burn the shit down. It doesn't belong to you. Burn it down. 7 million of you unemployed, and they wondering why you're in the streets? That's insane. Where is the African Union statements to the people of Africa about what's going on in South Africa? Where is the statement from Zambia and Mozambique, Angola? You know, where are the statements from Namibia telling the world what's really going on in South Africa? I just gave you the statistics on the unemployment and on the businesses. What else do you think people are going to do? I have a friend, Moshe. When the pandemic started, he didn't want to stay here and die. If he was going to die, he got on a plane as soon as he could and he left California and he went to South Africa to work the land that his grandfather had left for him, but could find no access to finance in South Africa for a young Black man with a degree in America to go and work to build that farm. could not find any anywhere in the government because certain ethnic groups controlling certain thing in the government will not give a pathway to another African ethnic person. After 1 year plus, he had to find his way back to California just to eat. He didn't have money to eat.
God.
Let's stop lying about the panacea of South Africa, because it doesn't exist for the overwhelming majority of African people in South Africa. Their situation is only 2 steps better, if that, from what it was under apartheid when it was controlled by the whites. Now you have apartheid controlled by the blacks. You want to know why they're in the streets? They may not understand the details that I'm saying, but they feel it. My little sister, another South African daughter of mine, who called the other day, was asking, Uncle, what do I do? I'm a teacher, even though I make just enough money to eat. They're telling me I must take this vaccine in order to even keep my job. What do I do? You know, there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with there. At the very basic level, and the most basic is the employment and the education preparation, especially in the technocratic sectors, the medical sectors, the mining sectors, for Black young people. And there's no way you can distribute land, but if you do not give the technology and the finances necessary to develop an arable piece of land, how are they going to compete with the other big farm conglomerates that's now controlling 72% of the farmland? We saw that same situation happening in Zimbabwe. And they certainly tried to do it there the right way. So the people are angry, the people are hungry, the people are homeless, the people are hopeless. The people don't know what direction to go in. So they're striking out at anybody who they think is responsible for their hopelessness. Those businesses they're burning, it's not theirs. The Indians have not made any serious efforts to share the wealth with the Africans. They got that wealth from being a part of the apartheid slave master caste of the British, who brought them there from India and Malaysia and set them up as the middlemen in trade with the East and as the wholesalers and retailers, while we were just the consumers. And when apartheid came, we were still just the consumers, and they are now embedded legally as the retailers, having to pay no reparations for the crimes committed against the people of South Africa. No, there's not much stability from rioting and looting, except to say to the ruling elite, if I can't eat, you won't eat. And one day I'll find the strength to pick up a gun to face your gun, so that if I can't be free, you won't be free. How would I dare? I would not come on your show, any show, and condemn my people who don't have jobs, and condemn my people who's hungry, because I know them personally, and condemn my people who can't get a decent education. And yes, South Africa would have a socialization process that have blacks killing other blacks from the very countries who helped free them, while smiling and grinning and dancing in the face of the whites who had enslaved them, without asking for any reparations or repair for the damage done. Now, either we're gonna be real or we're gonna be pretending, you know? You can go to all the mosques you want to go to. You can go to all the church you want to go to. If the result and the product I've seen the mosque and the church having given you, I wonder, either your God can't hear the language you speak, or you can't speak the language of that God you're trying to reach. Or maybe that's not the God you should be praying to. I'm an African. I have my own God. I have my own method of prayer. I have my own method of communion. I don't need my murderers. I don't need my enslavers. I don't need my apartheid rulers to give me the God of the killers, the God of the murderers, the God of the rapists, the God of the looters, the God of the oppressors. It didn't do nothing to stop them when they caused all this crime. What is it going to do for you now? Stop playing with your mind. African youth, stop playing with your mind. Organize. Make some demands. You want me to stop burning? Here's what I want. Here's my demands. Meet my demands. You think you can bring in 25,000 troops? Well, maybe I'll start taking the guns from those troops. And maybe some of those troops will sympathize with me because they're almost as poor as I am. And I will appeal to them. Appeal to the troops. Tell them about your poverty. The same person who has impoverished them. I'm not going to come here and criticize the people in the streets. We've had to get in the streets of America for centuries, burning down cities just to get basic human rights. Basic human rights, basic opportunities to work, basic affirmative action program. We had to go to prison by the thousands. They murdered our leaders, blew their heads off, the Medgar Evers, the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X. Those weren't just stories. Those were young men fighting for the same things the people in the streets of South Africa is fighting for. I certainly won't condemn those people. Because I know what we had to do. And we still having to do it. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, that everybody seemed to want to move to this place to find heaven. And the only way you can find heaven in America is if you help to kill the African American. White men will give you heaven. And the only way you're going to find heaven in South Africa without fighting for it is if you keep apartheid in place and pretend you're not suffering. And pretend it's all right. It is all right for a handful. But when you have the kind of unemployment rate that you have in this country, when you're talking about almost 50-something% of your people being unemployed, when you're talking about the majority of your unemployed being your women, you've lost your way. When 72% of the farmland is in the hands of the people who used to oppress you, and they're mechanized, and they're financed, and they're hooked up to international agri-conglomerates, and you think you're going to give a tractor to one farming family and say, go out there and compete against that? Stop playing. If you're going to do something with land reform, then form farm co-ops. Take a hint from Israel. They did it with the kibbutz like nobody in the world has ever done it. You can study and learn from anybody, even your enemy, because Israel certainly was the enemy of Black South African for most of its existence. But there are things you can learn from it. You can learn from this miserable country called America. Black America have turned this into the most human place in the world. Otherwise, it would be a desert. We made it rich. We gave it most of its technology and its sciences. And we still had to burn down community after community, decade after decade to get it done. And people said the same thing about us. How are they burning their communities? We don't own anything there. We're burning their communities, which are our neighborhoods. Whenever you only have a neighborhood in somebody else's community, you better make some arrangements, so you're going to end up having to burn it down. I hope that answered your question. Because it comes down to employment. It comes down to education. It comes down to justice for the poor. You can't create impoverishment and make it normal. Okay? And on top of all of this, we've got the COVID. And how many people are sick and dying and can't afford the basic health care before COVID, and now they can't afford anything except to sit there and die. And we wondering why they're in the streets? No, this isn't about Zuma. Zuma was nothing but the spark. This is about the conditions of the people of South Africa that has been allowed to fester under the fantasy of South Africa being the leading light of African Give me a break. What about Rwanda? What about Tanzania? What about Ghana? You know, what about even Zambia right next door? What about Namibia? But because you want to prove that letting white people off the hook for spending centuries killing and murdering and robbing you, and tell them you're going to give them a peace and reconciliation hearing, and then they can go home free. All they have to do is admit they murdered me. And now justice is served. For whom? For whom? That might have made some sense if the wealth that was stolen was put into place to build the schools and the education infrastructure, to bring the industry there to employ all of those youth that you had that's unemployed when apartheid was supposed to be over. But just to hand the keys and the guns to new managers of apartheid, and because their skin is black, everything is supposed to be all right. That's what we're looking at. Mm. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, Sister Dr.
How could anyone be indifferent? How could anyone be indifferent, Prof? It's not just an issue of answer, but the statistics speaks for themselves. I mean, you're living in a land that you call your own, and this kind of outrageous unemployment rate in your own house is like, you know, you have a house and strangers in that house control you, beat you, molest you, and leave you hungry, but you pay the bills of that house and host them. What kind of, I don't know how to even describe this. But we're talking about a situation that is really complex in its nature. First, like you said, the lack of, yes.
Very complex.
The lack of education. When we start and we look at the fact of, take the factor xenophobia, and we see South Africans telling Zimbabweans or the other, what are you doing in our land? Like Brother Rutendo that is there speaking like a voice, and with this, you know, with this fact, like what you're saying. And South Africans would be like, yes, if you say our country is like this, why don't you go to Zimbabwe? Is that ignorance or arrogance?
If mine is very simple. If it's so important to push white homosexual culture and protect it, but you can't protect the culture of the Zulu, of the Xhosa, of the Soto, of the Khoisan. They have cultures, they have beliefs, but you don't use xenophobia when you're talking about how their culture has been decimated and denied access of expression in a society where they're the majority. I don't care what someone's preference for sex, as they call it, because sex is sex and you can't change its nature. It happens between a man and a woman or it doesn't happen. So I don't play that game. You know, you're not gonna get me to act stupid. Water is wet. The sun is hot. You're not going to convince me of anything else, okay? Woman is woman. Man is man. Now, we may have some visions and attitudes, and if people are, whether it's psychological, whether it's social, whether it's cultural, I respect you, stay in your lane, but don't impose that on me as societal laws and rules that I must change my belief and my understanding of reality, and you can't even fight to get me the basics, food, clothing, and shelter. Every time I tried to raise my voice, you threw up a flag of multicolors and says, woe unto me. And we say, okay, we will protect everybody's human rights. But what about the human rights of the Black South African? It's, oh, now you rule your country, you're on your own. Then you pack your bags and go back to Europe and give me all of my mines. Give me all of the wealth that's in my ground. You can even take your equipment, put it on your ships and take it back to Europe. We will dig it out with our hands like we used to do for you. And if you don't want to do that, we know they don't want to do that, then let's sit down and talk about some equitability when it comes to the wealth of the nation, to put in the kind of industrial and agricultural infrastructure
Mm.
that will give the tooling and the skills to the people so you can have the South Africa you say you want. Not that the whites can live in their white paradise panacea and we're still on the apartheid plantation in Johannesburg and the other
Prof,
two people who populate.
I'm sorry. I want to come back to you. You said something very critical. Even Dr. J said it yesterday that one of the biggest mistake or one of the things that would actually not that is maybe neglected is the role of the women on the Winnie Mandela. And because South Africans made that error and they keep, even when he stayed in prison and came out, it was all about Nelson Mandela and nobody talked about Mama Winnie. Can you just go back to that impact and the role and the contribution that the women of South Africa, we're just talking about the case study of South Africa.
Go all the way back to Sharpsville. That was our women dying in the street with those children. The Sharpsville massacre was the murder of Black women. And I told you this before, we've had the discussion about almost every revolutionary movement in every African country that led to independence was founded by the Black woman, being the first to revolt against colonialism and against apartheid. There's no society where you marginalize or minimize your women that you can be successful, period.
Absolute.
You cannot marginalize, minimalize, and oppress your woman, the very foundation of the family structure itself. I'm not minimizing the men. We have our role, which is mostly outside of the household complex in order to maintain and support the household complex. But if you destroy the very element of that household foundation, which is the woman's ability to move in and out of society in whatever ways is necessary, to be trained, to go to college, to get tools, to find employment, to be protected from sexual abuse and harassment, then you have created a society that's going to die. You know, it's going to die.
Absolute.
And there's no history of any African society where a woman was marginalized or put at the bottom of that society. Tell somebody to show me an African history. Don't tell me about colonial history and what we did when we got caught up in our backwards colonial religions from the East or the West. Let's talk about our own traditions, you know, and our own university systems, which we call our rites of passage processes and programs, and our societies of secrets and so on for men and women that train them how to become adult and assume responsibility in the societies we then live in. Why can't we do that today for the societies we now live in? Whites want peace with us, then let's have true peace. Don't you sit over there with all the wealth that you stole from murdering me, with your barricades and your isolated gated communities, and your wealth being circulated only between you and your European cousins and families. And I'm sitting here just waiting for you to come and get me a scrap labor when you need something. Otherwise, I sit here and wallow in poverty. No. We had a song in the 60s, it's called Burn, Baby, Burn. Burn, baby, burn. Until somebody listens to you.
When we look at the silence of Africa Union, anyway, when we say Africa Union, sometimes people just think it's a building and a couple of people. We're talking about the 55 or 54 member states that are represented in the Africa Union. So let's just even say, if we just look at this, the silence of those member states or the countries in the South, even the neighbors, like you were saying, I don't know, do you think, or do we think that their silence is because they never actually experience apartheid? When I say apartheid, like the white population in their countries. If you look like Zimbabwe or Namibia is also that. But if we look like countries like Ghana or West African countries, or even some of the countries in the South that did not have this kind of, you know, white settlers, Do you think
Right.
that's the reason they can't understand
That's
the problem of South Africa?
Ignorance is a big part of the problem. And I've experienced that going to Africa. And I've been going to Africa 40 something years in multiple countries. And they can't understand why we're angry with the whites. Because and then at first you realize, you think everybody know your history, and then you realize even you don't know your history. So how can a stranger know your history?
Absolutely.
They have no idea what apartheid really is. They think it was just people not liking people. They didn't see the poverty. They didn't see the murder. They didn't see the suffering. They didn't see the enslavement. They didn't see the rape over centuries of this behavior put on one people that have no sanctuary, have no peace, have no hope. And then when they think they have hope, the world conspire against you. You think Nelson Mandela was just negotiating with the South Africans? No, he was negotiating with the Americans, with the British, with the Netherlands, with Germany. All of them backed the white South Africa, and they determined what was going to be the treaty. We made a big mistake. We should have brought the war from Namibia right to the doorstep of South Africa, and we would have gotten more of our money. They did it in Zimbabwe. And then when Zimbabwe showed that we are going to control Zimbabwe, then they put sanctions on Zimbabwe simply because they wanted to keep their own land, simply because they wanted justice. You had a Nuremberg trial for the Jews to give them justice, but you tell me to give Ian Smith a plantation on a golf course for the crimes against humanity committed against me in Zimbabwe. What is wrong with us? We watch the world and we see what's going on. And then we look at ourselves and blind our eyes, gouge our eyes out so we don't know what's going on. Because it makes us responsible to change it. We are responsible to fix it. And killing and brutalizing other people is not the path to do it. I would never advocate that. I would advocate revolution if it comes to that. Self-defense is the right of all human beings. But we have other tools. We can tell the major corporations in South Africa, we will boycott you until your building crumbles. We will not buy your products. We can't do it to all of them. So pick one. It says we need you to come and speak on our behalf as a people, as a community, that there's a crisis in South Africa around unemployment. There's a crisis in South Africa around education. There's a crisis in South Africa around health care delivery. There's a crisis in South Africa around just general fairness. Now, they could blame some of this on the ANC. Yes, the ANC is responsible. They can blame some of this on Nelson Mandela's ethnic group, who have a large piece of the pie. But that's allowed because the whites are saying, as long as you let us be who we are, you do what you want to your people. We have the wealth to alter anything this government do, the whites do. But they said, as long as you keep your people from prospering and competing with mine, long as you don't come out in the areas where we live, you stay in your cities, we'll put the dope in there for you. We'll let you have all your criminal enterprises you want. We'll run it at the top and we'll let you run it at the bottom. And then we'll have a nice prison system to put you in once you've committed a crime because you have no job. and the only thing you can do to make a living now is to commit a crime. So we need to just stop playing. Look at America. America's a good model. People look at America and they either envy the African American or and I mean my own people from around the world, because I don't play. I know how I've been treated. I'm meaning my nation of people. I am a nation, right? 60 to 70 million strong, the third or fourth largest African nation in the world, the wealthiest African nation in the world in terms of personal wealth. So we don't have to leave America to go to Africa for anything. But we know Africa is ours. That's our motherland. That's our home. And we're not going to be, at least those who are conscious, in partnership with those who would rob Africa, misuse Africa or try to conquer Africa. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a partnership with Africa that's different.
Yeah.
So look at us. Look
Yeah.
at what we've suffered in America. Look at what our relationships have been with white American banking and corporate structures. And don't make the same mistake in South Africa. Food, clothing, shelter, safety should be the human rights of all citizens. Access to food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security should be the human rights for all citizens. That means education and an opportunity for employment should be the human rights for all citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're unable to provide that, then you need to sit down with other nation states around Africa and figure out how that can be done. That's what the African Union is supposed to be for. But when I look at what's happening in South Africa right now, we know they failed. As they failed in Mozambique,
Mm-hmm.
as they failed in Zimbabwe, as they failed in Liberia, as they failed in Sierra Leone. So they need to study their history of failure to see how we can better solve this problem in South Africa before more people lose their lives, more people go to prison unnecessarily, and the infrastructure is damaged to the point that even if you get finance, it's going to take a long time to build it back. Mm-hmm. But don't blame the hungry man because he's screaming, I'm hungry. Don't blame the homeless man because he's screaming, I'm homeless. You know, and try to label them as looters. What's a looter? You know, why is that man doing that? No one loots as a normalcy. Something abnormal is going on to push a person to that place. Mm-hmm. What is the abnormalcy that has pushed the people to that place? Who are these people? Are they your working class people? Are they your unemployed? Are they your homeless? They're your hopeless. They're your marginalized that you turn your back on. So ask that question.
When we look at, I'm trying to prepare a video which we have to watch about Honorable Julius Malema predicting the future of South Africa through this kind of revolution, and he said South Africans would redeem. It means South Africa, even all the neighbors don't intervene in the cause of South Africans will make it right. And now, even when we talk about the other countries, or even African Union being silent, if we look at our spirituality and the way we connect, do we even need to know the meaning of appetite to feel the pain of one another?
No, but in order to solve the problem, you got to be able to do dissecting. You really got to understand what the pieces are, what the parts are.
Correct.
What has been broken, and how can we fix what has been broken? Mm-hmm. And what are the tools necessary? Yes, the first reaction is always what we're seeing in the street today, the emotional reaction. I'm hurting, I'm hungry, I don't care. You don't care about me, I don't care about you. Once that's done, then what? Where are we left? Mm. How do we rebuild and reconstruct? And that's where knowing comes in.
Okay.
What is the problem? I cite the statistics of unemployment.
If things are way the way they are.
Of who owns businesses and who don't, and who owns the land and who don't, and who owns the wealth and who don't. And that tells you why you got this large population that would go to the streets and do this. Mm-hmm. How do we solve that situation of unemployment, lack of business ownership, lack of wealth in that community, lack of education in that community, so there will not be a repeat historically of this event? And that means we must understand how apartheid worked. When it was supposedly dismantled, was it really dismantled? Or did they just get new managers? And I say it just got new managers with blackface.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I don't know whether it's even something to disagree about, because everything that you're saying, like I said, from every statistics, it is the fact. Now, the idea that you brought about the education factor, like definitely, if we don't even we that living with them never knew our history, how do we expect the young South Africans that are actually on the street now to know where do we start from? Should we go back to just understand this thing even without the history, they already know that there's some kind of injustice. Now, when we take a short break, we take a look at this video. Prof, we'll be joining you to move to the part of what should the youth in South Africa be doing today. So let's take the video, take a watch at the video that Honorable Julius Malema said, and get back to you. Thank you.
If things are going the way they are, there will be a revolution in this country, I can tell you now. There will be an unled revolution. An unled revolution is the highest form of anarchy. Even me, I'll be a victim of that. Why? Because I've committed a class suicide. I'm no longer with them in the townships. I'm now staying in town. I'm in parliament. I'm earning a salary. When they rise, they will rise against the middle class, and I will not even stand in front of them and stop them, because they will say, you sold us out, you left us in the townships, you went to join them there. I can tell you that now. This inequality, which is growing, which the gap is widening and racially based, blacks becoming more poorer and whites becoming more richer, is not sustainable.
Julius, he's right on it. You see, he hits the nail right on the head.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that because Julius grew in the hands of Mama Winnie Mandela, do you feel the spirit? Do you see that nurture, that young egg that grew up to be what it is today?
Yes, and remember, as much as I love Winnie, and I remember once she kissed me right there on my lips, and she said, "You are my revolutionary." We had been fighting in a situation, a political situation, and I came to help her and rescue out of that situation. She always saw herself as just one person in the revolution, not as the person in the revolution, but she was symbolic. She was symbolic of a total understanding of the plight of the people, that this was not about creating a Black elite. This is not about some people becoming rich. This was not about us just taking over government. This was about moving a people from the bottom upwards. Okay? Moving a people economically, moving a people politically, moving a people with cultural restoration so they have cohesion and not bitterness between their ethnic nations. And so when he saw revolution as a totality of the development of the nation, not the seizure of political power, that's only a small piece of a revolution. And that's the difference that we hear in this young man, that he got from the Winnie and the mindset that Winnie represented and the other women and men and youth around her represented. That type of thought has been pushed aside and was told, try the system, the so-called democracy system. It has never worked anywhere in the world. And Africa has its own democracy before we meet white people. But we're going to take their failed democracy, like we take their failed socialism and Marxism, and keep trying to cook it in a pot over and over and over again. It doesn't work for them in Europe. It doesn't work for them in America. It only works because they can rob Africa unabated. Stop the robbery of Africa, and all of the Western world collapse. So they sit with their nuclear bomb and their neutron bomb and their bacterial warfare and their germ warfare, and they hold it over the heads of our leaders, or they'll carry out assassination like the president of Tanzania or the president of Burkina Faso, or they'll overthrow you like the president of Cote d'Ivoire, or they'll kill you like they killed the multiple presidents of Togo, etc. With that type of fear and intimidation, you sit in your office and pretend you're an African diplomat, but you don't fight for the freedom of your people, knowing that freedom is about economic, politics, and culture. If you cannot give the people control of the economic, politics, and culture where they live, you're not bringing freedom of anything. You're just managing their oppression.
Mm.
And we must stop managing oppression and calling it freedom.
Managing their oppression. This hurts. This really hurts. You know, when you say it and the way you articulate it, and we bring it, you know, in this kind of a case study, I don't think we need a whole lot of levels to understand. It's just one key word, like what you're saying. You know, we just there being diplomatic, lying to ourselves. One key thing that you said, Prof, and I begin to say, no matter what we do as solutions, if we don't speak the truth to ourselves, we don't look at ourselves and know that we are lying at the expense of our people. We keep lying, we keep swearing in to change, but we lie.
Yeah. When my young brother called me from South Africa a few months ago and said, Prof, I came home, but I can't eat. Prof, I'm hungry. This is a man with a master's degree. You know, this is a man who has land that he wants to farm, but he can't get $1 from any source in South Africa. There's no mechanism in place. So he had to find a way, even though his green card had run, to get back here where he could at least eat. No, stop playing. And he just happened to be my little brother that I know. Think of all the others whom I don't know. I don't know them in the same situation. My little sister, who's in South Africa, was teaching, who had her teaching degree in South Africa. I met her because she saw me on your show. And she came to America. They told her she's coming to go to school. But to go to school, she had to, you know, take this job as a nanny and cook and take care of the children for these people. But they lied. There's all these organizations that bring out children from Africa, enslave them. They give them a few courses that don't make no sense, that they can't use for anything, and they won't help them get into the university. They just keep them over here as cheap labor, slave labor, nanny for middle class and upper class white people in urban America, from New York to California. She just happened to see me on your show and called me. And I went to the house where she was working in Brooklyn to get her and bring her to my family. And when she was finished her contract, she went back home. But she's just one of thousands and thousands of African women they do that to every day.
Absolutely.
And get raped and molested by these people in these homes because I captured this one. That couldn't happen to her. We need to wake up to truth and stop lying to ourselves about these relationships we have with our oppressors and their system without understanding how these systems work. If they had said, okay, yes, you will be working for minimum wage or below to take care of these children, but we will assure that you can get into the university and you can get a degree, then I said, okay, you can suffer that because at the end of the day, you can walk away and take care of yourself and build a family. But they won't even do that. They won't even do that. And our churches are the ones helping to bring our poor out of South Africa and other parts of Africa, especially South Africa, into these slave programs in America and Europe to be the nannies for white people while being the concubine for the white men in that home and giving just enough money to buy a few things. And maybe you can send a little piece back home that don't amount to much. You wonder why the people are in the streets? Tell the truth. Like I'm telling you the truth. I love my people wherever they are, in whatever country they're in. But I'm going to tell the truth. South Africa, the political leaders have to ask first they have to let everybody they're arrested out of jail without a trial. Okay, stop playing. You didn't arrest Stephen Biko's murderer, so don't justify some hungry kid or some foolish kid who just saw something wrong and stole something. Okay, I can even understand that. But don't you tell me you're going to have a peace and reconciliation. You let all these murderers go, and then you're going to put my baby in jail because he stole a pancake because he was hungry. No. Or an iPhone, maybe. Says, oh, but he didn't steal a pancake, he stole an iPhone. Yes, you put an iPhone, but you say, I'll never give you a job to make enough money to buy an iPhone, but I'll dangle it in front of you all day. Yeah. I don't care what nobody thinks of me. I am who I am. And for those who know me, you can go to YouTube. I've been speaking for 50 years. I've been talking about these things. Over 50 years. Non-stop. One issue. We must be able to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for our people. You must, in order to do that, you must be in control of the economic, politics, and culture where you live. To do that, you must get access to land, labor, and resources where you live. Does the South African individuals have that? Do they have access to land, labor, and resources? Do they control the economic, politics, and culture where they live? Can they provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for themselves and their families? If the government can't answer those questions, yes, then you got a big job you need to get out there and do. Or more of your city is going to burn. You may stop this one, but there'll be another one.
I have been 50 years sitting here and I speak the truth and I say what I say. You see, this is what we hear. This is what we like, and this is what we're grateful for. This is why we're thankful, because your words, and not just your words to educate, is, I don't know, before we would wail when we see all these riotings and all this, even with deaths among them, young children, people carrying just meat, a whole beef on their head, a single person carrying it alone in the street on the head with cameras all where, a daylight, right? Before we would see all these things, Professor James Moore, we would cry, we would feel victimized. But with you and the elders and the Pan-Africanism and the awakeness that we have in us today, we know we will still have to suffer a little bit, but we are certain that we're going to make it.
Yeah.
We are certain that South Africans and the youth will make it.
The
Yes.
white and black elite in South Africa. The white and black elite. Because the whites aren't going anywhere. Europe has nothing to offer them. They're not going back to Europe. Africa, those whites who've come to Africa and never went back for generations, most of them were criminals when they left Europe. Most of them were sent as criminals. I mean, Britain emptied its prison and sent them to Africa and America and Australia, okay? These people are the descendants of criminals. But okay, I won't hold you responsible for that. You're living now. You bettered yourself. You know you're not going back to Europe because there's nothing there to go to Europe for. Only the foolish African think that the glitter they see as the illusion of Europe is worth dying to get to. And then when we see the boats with so many dying crossing the Mediterranean, and we see so many homeless in Belgium and Antwerp and Italy, and then we pretend we didn't see that. We just see the one that made it to college and became a lawyer, and the one who got to be wealthy, and the thousands that live in poverty in Europe and America. We don't see them. Mm-hmm. Tell the truth. And you want to be a good Christian, it's fine. The first edict of Christianity is know the truth. Mm-hmm. The truth shall set you free.
Ashe.
Truth alone shall set you free. So forget about it. Just use what you've been taught, you know. Don't pass. You want to say, okay, small, use some African radical. Okay, let me be the good Samaritan. Mm-hmm. On the road to Samaria. Do I leave the hungry beside the road? Do I leave the homeless beside the road? Is that what Christ would do? Mm-hmm. Don't tell me you stand in this shadow, but you behave like the devil. Mm-hmm. No. I'm old enough to know better. Unemployment, poor education, exploitation of the most marginalized group in society, and where South Africa is concerned, that is particularly the Black population, is what led to this. Zuma was only the spark, because most of them don't care about Zuma or know enough about Zuma to care about Zuma. Zuma didn't do nothing for them either, except continue the status quo. But this became an excuse to strike out. Hopelessness, lack of opportunity, nothing to dream for, because possibilities seems outside of your realm. That's what have the people in the streets. Sit down with the leadership and says, what can we do? Stop playing game with the whites. I said, look, you want to stay in peace in this land, then let's work together to make this land a land of prosperity for everybody that lives in it.
Absolutely.
Not just you and your isolated gated communities, guarded private armies, you know. So Africa needs to wake up. That's why you can go around Africa and you find all these big land called animal preserves. But all these animal preserves is all these fancy hotels and chalets that the riches of Europe can come and enjoy in Africa. And if we go in there, we get shot. Let's stop. Secret to life is to have no fear. It should be freedom or death. Freedom or death. Freedom or death. And to acquire freedom, freedom means you must be shackled to your what? Your identity. Shackled to your identity. That's the only way you're going to know freedom. And you have to make clear, either I have my freedom or you can take my life or I'm going to take yours. But I'm not going to be a slave. We had a song we sang here. It was in the 60s. It said, before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I'll go home to my God and I'll be free. Oh, freedom over me. And that's a thought we should constantly keep. There's no need to live in poverty in the richest continent on the planet Earth. There's no need to live in poverty in the richest country on the continent of Africa.
Correct.
Except there are others who just do not care about the human rights of others or do not have any compassion or empathy for humanity's suffering. So if you don't, then those who you have no empathy for and no compassion for burn your city down. Why are you complaining? Why are you complaining? Know the truth that will set you free.
Tomorrow we're going to be having a series of young South Africans. Nongosolo is one of them. She's what we call the replica, the granddaughter of Winnie in a transition. And we're also going to be having Neisha Melkon, Zimbabwean. I mean, she's your daughter and she's our daughter. And then we also going to have a young man from Zimbabwe. He is also very articulate, and for them, they want to put a roadmap for their young people to say, okay, yes, that's a way of expression, but what is it that we can do that is sustainable? We will do both. We want to use every means at our disposal to achieve what we want. To own what we want, to defend our rights and the reason for that. So what would you think that they should know?
Well, the first thing they should do is speak out loudly against the attacks.
Speak out loudly
against the attacks against non-South African Africans who have come to their land just as they wish to migrate to other lands. What if we treat them that way in African America? We have millions of continental Africans here. We also have millions of people who are impoverished. Do we kill our brothers and sisters who have come here to find a better living because we have people who are impoverished?
Mhm.
You know, how foolish that would appear. So that's the first thing they've got to speak out against. They
Okay.
got to talk about Africa and then South Africa as a part of Africa,
Okay.
you know. And the question of proper education and tooling and affordable access to proper education and tooling for the young population so that they can get in the job markets that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's not saying, a lot of Europeans are coming to South Africa and getting jobs. Nobody's burning their houses down.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Asians are coming in. Nobody's burning their houses down. So what we must ask the question about self-hate, which comes from ignorance of your basic history. Because if you're not willing to deal with self-hate and identity, you're just playing a game called Africa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just playing a game. We want white folks to see us. Oh, look at my nice African dress. Oh, into African fashion. I can walk the runway like you.
Oh, I can dance.
Look at me, I'm an African actress. I'm a model. Oh, I'm Miss Universe. That's one person out of a couple of billion people. So we can do all of that. We can do anything because we are the original. We are the African. But we must focus on our finite situation. Food, clothing, shelter, safety. Bottom line. Can't have any discussion unless you first raise food, people having access to it, clothing, shelter, and safety. And that next step is then how do we get control of the economics, the politics, and the culture that would allow us to provide the food, clothing, shelter, and safety. See, we'd be talking about prosperity without talking about the reason for it. The reason is you got to eat and you got to have a place to live. So that must be factored in from the very beginning. Decent housing, decent sewage system, so our health can be maintained, a decent access to clean water supply, electricity in the facilities in where we live. This is all doable and affordable. South Africa have the wealth to do this in the next 10 years, and there wouldn't be a single impoverished person there. But that's a conversation that somebody must have with those who have the wealth in their hands and those who control industry in their hands. How can you have a Johannesburg stock market? How can you have all this gold and diamond and you got all these impoverished people? China is doing better than that in its poorest province because the intent is to make sure people have food, clothing, shelter, and safety. If that's not the intent, doesn't matter what else you do.
Do we also see a possibility where if this youth can actually mobilize themselves into groups, let's just say into groups, into townships, into communities, we would have that access actually to educate them through some basic skills and even start some small projects where when they develop these projects, we in the diaspora,
our great grandchildren will be dead and gone. No, this is not kindergarten. This is university time. And youth, separate from their elder population, can't go anywhere. That's been part of the mistakes we've been making for the last 40 years, following the white man thing. You never see the white youth do a damn thing. It's the white elite and adults that do everything in their European society. And then they give us this mythology. Yes, the youth have to be at the table, but as one member of the family, not a separate family. Now, let me say that again, because we make that mistake over and over. And that's why we end up in conflict. The youth must be at the table with full equality as a member of the Black African family, not as a separate family. Because then you have nothing. You're right where you started. but the ideas of the youth must be heard and must be adhered to. But the youth also have to make sure that they're respecting the ideas of their elders and their families. And that's been the weakness in Africa. We keep playing these either or games, and we haven't come up with anything. You come from a very beautiful country with an extraordinary history, with one family ruling it for the last, 30-something years, more? And we can't wrestle it out of their hands because they're supported by the British on one side and the French on the other, even though we over there fighting, oh, I speak English and I'm in this province and that. But the British and the French are both supporting the president of Cameroon and the Americans, as long as he keeps the status quo, him and his family stay in place. I didn't mean to bring that right home to you like that, but I just wanted to show you it really has to be the African family must figure out how do we, because when SWAPO was fighting in Namibia, they had the youth and they had the elders, and they all worked together to sing SWAPO will win, and they won. When Frelimo was fighting in Mozambique, they had the youth and the elders. All of them fought together, and that's why we ran the Portuguese out of Mozambique. When PAIGC was fighting in Guinea-Bissau, they had the youth and the elders. It wasn't a separation. Okay,
I get your point.
They ran the Portuguese out.
I
And so
understand.
the youth must come forward and speak, but don't speak for the youth. Speak for your people.
Yes.
And
Okay.
if you do that, then the people will listen because you're speaking for them, because they can't help themselves. The older ones who are hurt and injured and broken and hopeless, you've got to bring them a hope, not saying, okay, the oppressors have left you side the road. Now we're going to come and leave you side the road too. No, we're going to include you in what we do.
Thank you very much, Prof, because that point is very relevant. And I think we keep making this mistake. The youth, I mean, we've seen even a lot of some voices also, like you say, the youth have to. So actually, it is us collectively. The parents must come together with the youth and they form this, and then they give over the mantle. But when they keep saying, oh, now is the future is for the youth, when they never left anything for the youth anyway.
No, that's not true either. That's never been true in Africa. See, what we've got to do is make sure we're looking at it through African eyes and not through European eyes. Almost everything my ancestors have done has been for the youth. But what we've done is the mistake we made is thought that we could send our youth to be trained by our enemy and they could come back home and still be our youth. And that's not what happened. All those people who run Africa were once the youth, and their elders sent them away to be educated by the enemy. And so they've come back home and they act like they've been educated by the enemy. And we think, oh, what's up? You send your baby to your enemy to be trained. You send your baby to your enemy to run his enterprise of oppression against you. So what else do you think he's going to do when he comes back and become the president and the prime minister? It seems so simple.
That is so unfortunately true.
So what we got to do, whether we are 6 years old or 106, we have come together for the sake of Africa.
I share. Yes. Okay. I think, do you want us to take some questions, Prof? Because I see
I don't mind.
Okay. Because this the topic, I mean, just to chill down our nerves and know that, yes, we're in a lecture, and I think we've had enough material out there and giving us a sense of direction. And like I see, all of us are very, very active in this chat, and it's very interesting because South Africa is very, very important to the development of the entire continent. And I like what Prof said, speak out for Africa collectively, But then no, this is young woman, and she's like, what are we going? I said, no, remember, you have a continent and you have a country to lead. You have a continent to take care and you have a country to lead. So I'm opening up the lines for any questions, direct questions or comments or feedback that you think it is relevant also for us to pick. Or if you want, you can drop it in the chat. I'll bring it up to Prof, or he can pick it. If not, then we'll be rounding up. We have, I think, about 15 minutes left. So we will just go to maybe a recap of the main things that we know that our youths are coming tomorrow. Okay, already get some callers coming in on the line. So let's pick this first one. Please keep the calls short. If it's a questions, just go direct to the question. Don't repeat what have been said again. So these are the rules so that we can give room to others. You know, if it's a comment, just go ahead. Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Susan. My name is Kwame, and I want to ask the professor a question.
Yes.
Hi, Professor. I've been watching you for the past 10 years from Sanena TV. So I've known you for a very long time. I live in the U.S. right now. But the question I want to ask you really quick is, we as a people, African people, you know, do you think we should start thinking of bringing international class action lawsuits to the international courts for multi-trillion-dollar worth of reparations against the Catholic Church and all, you know, melanated people, you know, against the Catholic Church, period? Because from what I found out in history, they started this mess with Intercatera with Pope Nicholas, I think Pope Nicholas V or something like that. And ever since the Pope declared that papal bull, we have been going through this for centuries. That's my question. Thank you.
Well,
Wonderful. Thank you, Kwame.
A good question, and I would support 100% that. There's a lot of organizations working around the world to advance the reparations movement and the repair movement for our people against both the Catholic Church, the Ramat Alim al-Islamim, the Islamic headquarters in Mecca, because 1,500 years before the Catholic Church started doing this, we had the Ottoman Empire doing it. And they partnered with the Christian Empire to create the transatlantic slave trade. I think every Western capital should receive a subpoena to come to court and pay reparations and restorations and repair to the African population without question. And that's one thing that young people can do, is do the research necessary, because anytime you talk about courts, you're talking about evidence.
Yes.
So do the research necessary. What corporations, what companies that are all across Europe today? The Catholic Church is a corporation. It is a nation state called Vatican City. It receives ambassadors, it sends out ambassadors, it has its own money. So you can't sue them. And so we should begin to study how that process, that's something you might want to lead, can proceed. But you live in the US, there's a group called NCOBRA that have been fighting the reparations issues for years. Or you can check in Washington with the Black Caucus. The Black Caucus has just passed something in Washington to at least study the reparations issues. But there's reparations movement going on among CARICOM in the Caribbean against Britain and France and the Dutch for their enslavement. So yes, I think we ought to take them all to court. They should all be brought to Geneva before the World Court and be charged with crime against humanity. Because we know that 10 years, how long ago now? 10, almost 20 years ago, the Durban Accords, where the United Nations declared that the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity. That means there is no end date on when the criminal could be punished or brought to heel for the crimes committed. So I think it's a good question. And I think it's something you should begin to research further and try to find it. Just go to and look up reparations. You'll see all the different groups. This is Google reparations. There's multiple groups, both on the continent and off, that are trying to fight towards that issue, and then loan your skills to help them do it.
I concur. That was really, really, yes. I think on point. That should be something that, particularly on the continent, the youth or even the elders have never ever thought about that. Because yeah, the word slavery and colonization actually is strange on the curriculum of the continent. That's why they don't even know.
In 1975, I think, there was a big conference on reparations in Nigeria led by President Abiola.
Okay.
I have the proceedings at that conference, so I can find a way to share that with you. That was probably the largest world forum on reparations ever held. But that was part of the reason why they overthrew President Abiola and eventually killed him in Nigeria. So we've been fighting it, but it's up to the youth to keep it going, because each generation bring their new body of knowledge to it, to advance it. And we got technology now where we can do research today we couldn't do in the 70s or 80s.
Absolutely.
And we can find out that the insurance companies, the top insurance companies in Britain, insured the enslaved cargo. All right. We were a commodity for them. And they got rich insuring us as we were dragged across and murdered across that ocean, you know. So these kinds of things we need to study and get the documents. The documents are there because they keep good records on things financial. They don't throw up the financial records, which is a good thing for us, for them.
Yes, yes, yes. I think fine. That's very fine. Evidence, evidence, evidence. We have a lot of evidence. I mean, we see all these pictures of Belgium and the hands of the children that were being chopped. Those are evidence. We have a lot. Most of these things, I mean, we never thought about it in this, or the young people never thought about it in this direction. But now that, I mean, an idea could come up like that, why not? So, yes, let them get to work.
The world have declared it a crime against humanity. The UN have declared it a crime against humanity. So let's do the research to get our evidence together, to take them into the courts and fight on every front that we can fight on. The courtroom is one front. The economic basis is another front. The educational and curricular change. The other thing Africa needs to really fight is to come into, to abolish all of these colonial curriculums and put in place an African curriculum. People say, well, what about math and science? Africans invented math and science. And you can write math and science so that it is racist and marginalized towards one people, or you can write it so it's inclusive and supportive of one people. And that's what the Europeans have done. So we need to conceptualize curricula across the African continent. Otherwise, we're just training. We used to say, there was a word, it's like training the mouse to be caught by the cat, you know? So we don't want to train the mouse to be caught by the cat. We want to train the mouse to know how to recognize the cat and get out of its way.
Good, good, good. I think, yes, thank you so very much, Prof. And we knew only you would, I mean, the evidence, and you talk with facts, with data, and it's very evident that all of us now watching, we're going to share this video. We're going to reproduce even copies of this one. I mean, we're so happy. Nesha broke it out yesterday to us. Pan-African Daily TV is available now on TikTok. So you all watching us, just click on TikTok.
Congratulations to Naisha. She works so hard.
Yes.
She's such a special, special angel. So congratulations.
Oh, yes. Yes. She's going to be on tomorrow also to give us a lot of insight about this social media. She's created TikTok. She's created Tomel. She's created LinkedIn and Pinterest, and all where you can find us. And on TikTok, she's been putting a couple of Professor James Small, the last one. I mean, this seconds or 30 seconds one, which you can actually make them go viral in all your groups, in all your communities back home. Yeah. Tonight, also this coming week, we are going to be producing a session of this conversation into small portables where we can share, particularly in this groups, in the groups. When we're looking for the solutions and we have solutions like this, it means all of us that are part of the revolution or the movement should then disseminate this information as viral as possible. So to reach it, I think that's already the basic education, Prof, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's the key. We got to use every tool we got. You know, once there wasn't a printing press. When the printing press came to Europe, Europe had a renaissance. You know what I'm saying? So now we've got the computers with all of these different platforms. We need to use them as efficiently as we can. That's why Nyasha is to be commended for the work that she's doing.
Oh yes,
And
she's
if
my
we-
pal.
Yeah, we use these tools to get information to places we couldn't even imagine
Yes,
getting information just 5 years ago. You know, so that-
absolutely. But it was so good, Prof, because I mean, she shared just 3 of your videos, the past conversations that has been trending. You can imagine those conversations we repeated, like you advise us to do. We have to keep repeating the message, and each time we've scored more than 40,000 to 50,000 same conversations. I mean,
Mhm.
it is really amazing. And when Aisha put those copies out there, I think just 2 days ago we had more than 1,000 viewers. So our population is awake, our family is awake. All of us that are watching here, they are just awake and doing the right thing. And I cannot just be so much than grateful to Naisha, my pal, my pal. She's my godmother, my grandmother. She's young, but she gives me all the wisdom. She's an old woman that is also in the skin. We still don't know which warrior she is, Prof. We still don't know.
Yeah, Nyasha's got a lot of, I call her the Shango energy. The Shango is a lightning bolt. But
Okay.
she's done very well, very well.
All right. The last question is coming here. Professor James Moore, do you think we will ever free ourselves from these psychopath monsters running the world?
Yes. But the key is don't be afraid to gain knowledge. Knowledge is the key to freedom. Knowledge of things economic, knowledge of things political, knowledge of things cultural, knowledge of things educational. Learn about world trade. It seems so complicated, but it's not complicated. Somebody's got a need and somebody's trying to serve the need. Somebody's going to come up with capital, somebody's going to receive capital. And so they've agreed to some laws and rules on how to play that game. We can Google the game and see how the game is played. Let's use the technology we have to gain knowledge of all kinds of things. Hospitality industry, tourism industry. We think of tourism, we think of nothing. Tourism is the 3rd largest industry in the world. The 3rd largest industry in the world. We see a restaurant on the corner, but it lives not just because a few neighborhood people comes. It lives because of the tourists who don't live in the neighborhood comes. So it's New York City would die if tourism stops. London would die if tourism stopped. Paris would die if tourism stopped. But they don't tell you that because they want to control the mechanism of the tourism that feeds your home. You have to be the one on the ground that says, okay, if the tourist is going to come to my country, then I'm going to control the on-ground hospitality industries and operations. And so sit down and study, how do we do that? Not just have a group to talk about politics, but let's have a group to talk about how we build economic enterprises.
Of course.
That's just one industry. The clothing industry is another industry. We think of it on the fashion end being the model. No, the retailer is the one making the money of the clothing. The designer is making money, yes, but that's a handful of people. But the people who's sewing those garments, who owns the factory that hires the people that sew the garments, that put it together to sell it to the guy who owns the truck, that takes it to the store, who buys it from, that's how you make the money. Find out how the industry works. And then set up yours industry. So it's knowledge. Knowledge is the key to freedom. But it can't be anybody. It has to be knowledge that takes into account your survival as a people. You can't say, oh, because I'm making it, I'm going to partner now with the Asian merchants and the colored merchants and the white merchants. I'm not going to be around those black folks because they're not making it. No, if you make it, then your first job is to reach back into your Black population and say, let me show you how to make it. Like me. With me.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. So, I mean, one thing that we've learned tonight, as we're leaving you, Prof, is just to packet our smiles and sell it to the sad, lonely world.
Mm. We will be free because we want to. We have to teach our young people to want to be free. We have to teach them that freedom is something that they can be. And that freedom involves economic politics and culture. Never discuss freedom without mentioning economic politics and culture. Never. Never discuss economic politics and culture without mentioning food, clothing, and shelter for every family. That is their human rights.
Mm-hmm.
If we stay on course, we know what our goals are. We know what our intentions should be. Every bit of content should have intent. And every intent should come out of well-planned content.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank the entire African Daily TV family. So I hope to see you soon. Thank you, Dr. Susan Tata, Queen Mother Susan Tata. Thank you, Nyasha. And I know your son is somewhere. I can't see him, but I thank him very much for the work that he's doing. So I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Yes, stay safe, stay healthy. We want to see you fit all the time. Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks. Wow, good. So happy people, family. I mean, what else do we want? We have everything with us, particularly in this time and space. You can see we're glowing, we're smiling. If you look back at when we started the Pan-African Daily TV, all of us actually thought it was impossible. And we saw a very big load. I mean, when I sat here all the time and we heard all this, it was like, are we going to make it? Is it possible? When we heard all about China and we saw even the incidents surrounding the world, particularly when COVID actually just hit, it was like the whole world is falling down, but particularly on us Africans, which already we're coming from that sector. But then we turn everything, like nature, like our ancestors, like the God of our creation is turning everything to work now in our favor. And now we see that we're even privileged that we come from what people always refer to us as the suffering people. And so only the suffering people survive in times of, hardship because we are used to. Now we saw how a pandemic, I'm not talking about COVID itself, but we saw just an incident where people went just into depression and a lot of things, and many Africans, apart from normal diseases that will carry any other person. So we're used to. So sometimes what the world gives us and think that they're doing it to us, to be honest with you, it works always in our favor, particularly when challenges come. What is that supposed to mean? Every challenge from African is a way forward. It's an opening. It's a new beginning. It's even a way to measure our strength of resistance. It is a measurement tool for us to create new strategies to overcome. We did that 400 years ago, 5,000 years ago, even in our civilization, and we will still do it today, and we will do it even tomorrow. Proof and case. Sometimes it's just because we use what they tell us that we are, and then we propagate it. Most often, if really, truly we know who we are, believe me, it would have taken 4 decades. We would not have existed. There are a lot of proofs. Even the South Africa we're talking today, we would have not been seeing this population that we're seeing today going out to the street for whatever it is. If we look at the agenda and the plan to wipe out a whole continent of people, bring them as slaves, kill them, murder them, hundreds, millions, for decades upon decades. And yet we rise, yet we populate, yet we grow, yet we produce, yet we survive. Wow, what is it again? So it is just that time, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Our elders are giving us the tool, giving us to us the middle class and middle age, and we are giving it up now to the younger generation, to the Naisha generation, and they're already on board with us. They're even managing us. Like Naisha, I take her like a very permanent, a prominent woman that would be that woman when all of us in our generation, Naisha and her generation, will make it right because they're already on board with us now. So it is time we're gathering our children, our young people, the old, the middle, the future. So we build the Africa we want as a family. We saw Dr. J showed us that beautiful image. Yeah, the symbol of unity, of liberty, of renaissance. And he said, no, it was not just three people. Look at that. I mean, all of you that watched that show yesterday, or you can still look in Senegal, you would see that symbol. But the way he explained it, the family, the Black family, the African family, that is actually our key. Yes, he said it. That's the unit point. I still have the notes here. Yeah, from yesterday. I went through it again this morning to redigest it because Patrick is reproducing the series out here. And I can tell you, we don't lack anything. The only one thing that we lack is to produce, to practice that unity so that it becomes visible. So in terms of celebrating, we celebrate one another, right? I mean, we're just going to do the practical things now. The knowledge, we have it. The know-how, we have it. Even the technology. We keep talking about the skills. Particularly on this case, when we talk about, oh, we need to learn how to do business. Africans are still saying, oh, we have to do like China. We have to do like the West. But I ask myself, look at our mothers and our fathers, their second, third generation. How did they trade? They actually trade. Did they learn from China? China was not even existing, isn't it? And they never even could read and write their names, but they traded. And so if we could just look back at our own roots, develop our own from our own, now we can learn some little bit and tricks from the others because they're tricky. What the African doesn't know, we don't know tricks. We don't know how to lie in our favor. We lie against us, right? We don't know who actually we should punch. So we, instead of punching the right people, we punch us. So that's just the difference I've seen in the whole theory, in the whole education, in the whole session here. I've gathered just one thing. We have everything that we need, but instead we redirect these energies in the negative way. So what if we start actually knowing where to put the good and the bad negativity, the bad energy, we give them back to them, back to sender, right? And then we inculcate the fresh ones, the natural ones, the organic, the non-GMOs. we squeeze it among us and we celebrate among us. So I want to invite you to join us tomorrow again. You all followed the 2 past sessions. I might miss something with the youth that will be coming on tomorrow. And so you could remind me or remind them of all the things that Professor James said we should tell them what they should be doing. I've noted some here, but if I missed the point, you were actually listening, right? Good. I was walking too. I was walking. So that's what we're gonna do tomorrow. So tomorrow, same time is Saturday, and yes, after tomorrow, tomorrow is gonna be the last show, and then we'll meet again on Thursday. Why? We want to limit the productions 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so if we have special occasions like break-ins, we can come on Sunday. But we have a lot of groundwork to do. With these professors that we're talking about, we're putting out a virtual platform where we can connect youth and do proper training, the kind of trainings that we will not be infiltrated on our own, and it's coming very, very soon. So we want to engage more time on building that background. So Pan-African Daily will be live Thursday, Friday, Saturday, occasionally on break-ins. We will also be live, but we're live anytime. We're live, as you know. So, but reproducing all the seminars, putting them into all the media platforms, and also putting those live. But it's not going to be live, it's going to be live. So we're going to reproduce it and put it live. So can I get this one call from this queen? Hello?
Thank you so much for
Yes.
Oh my God, Dr. Tata.
Yes.
That man has given us so much gems to work with. So much. Oh God. Oh God.
Go ahead, sister. I mean, the show is over with him, but we're just here talking our own background gossips. The Bible, I'm not really a fan, but they say if you find one in every generation that you can say this is mine, then you are blessed. And we have one in this generation. We are blessed. We have thousands of them.
Listen.
Yes.
I love the Bible because I am a Hebrew Israelite and I celebrate the Shabbat. This evening is the pre-Shabbat. Shabbat starts at sundown. And this program has given me enough food to pray over during the Shabbat that God will actually uplift the South Africans, because I didn't realize the poverty that these people were living in their own country, which is so wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And what the professor said is so true, that they have to work together with those white Mzungu criminals. It's so terrible. They have to work with them to bring out the South Africa that they want. Because he is right. They are not going back to Europe.
Mm.
They have got their wealth in South Africa in their gated communities, and they're living comfortably. They are scared of what is happening now. They don't want to lose what they've got. So what the South Africans are doing by the looting and the devastation, hallelujah, it is good, because it's going to put the fear of God into those Mzungus, that they will have to come to the table of the black South Africans and deal with them. They have to come to their table.
Mm-hmm.
The black South Africans do not have to go to the Mzungu's table. The Mzungus have to come. And mark my words, Dr. Susan Tata.
I hear.
They will come, because they know they have nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
They are in the land of the black people.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing, we must not call Africa, Africa, because we are giving energy to that dead Portuguese man who was called Africanus, who called the country Africa. It is called Alkebulan.
Alkebulan, yeah.
And that is what we must talk about.
Okay.
When we talk about that country, we are talking about Alkebulan. That is spirituality. And that is where we need to start.
Thank you.
Because we are going to get our energy back from our ancestors. Could you imagine how they are cringing in the grave that we're calling the country Africa? It's Alkebulan.
Yes, agreed.
Today in London, I was in a supermarket. Two things I'll tell you that is going to make you realize Professor Small is speaking the truth. I was in a laundrette in central London doing my laundry. A young African man came in and asked the Chinese woman who is working in the laundry. It's not her laundry, she's a worker, and she was manning the desk. He asked her, "Can I leave my laundry and pay for it with my card?" She said, "No, we only accept cash." He said, "What about contactless? I have contactless on my card." She said, "No, We only accept cash. Go to the supermarket and change the money. I looked at him and God spoke to me. And I asked him, I said, young man, would you use the machine, if you can, to wash your clothes rather than leaving it for her to wash it because she's not going to do it? He said, I can use the machine. I went in my purse, I took out the coins that he needs for the machine. I gave it to him, and God is so good. I went to the laundrette without getting my soap. When I asked her how much is for 1 cup of soap, because she sells it, she said £1. And I thought, that's ridiculous, because I could buy a whole box of soap for £2. So I said to her, okay, I'm just going to the shop next door. So I went to the shop next door and I got a box of soap for £2.49. And it was soap that you don't have to use a lot of because it's extra strong. And I didn't know that I was going to encounter this African man. When I told him, here's the coins, you can wash your clothes, she said, okay, he needs to buy the soap. It's £1 for a cup. I said, no, he'll use my soap from my box. And I gave him the soap. I said, here you are. You can use my soap.
That is it.
What the woman did? She went to the machine and she helped him put his dirty clothes in the machine. And she got one of her cup and took my soap and filled the cup and put it in the machine for the man. And I said, look at what she's doing. She's helping you now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, sister.
When we sat down, yes, this is Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
When we sat down, he said to me, madam, give me your phone number so that I can repay you. I said, no, you don't have to repay me. It comes from God. And you can pay it on to somebody else. I don't want the money.
Ashe.
I even give him the coin so that he can put it in the dryer to dry his clothes as well. So he said, I must take a picture. I said, I don't want it on social media. He said, no, this is for my wife and my child. We are traveling back to America. We just come from Africa.
Oh.
So I asked him, where do you come from? And he said he was born in America, but his family comes from Ghana. Now, Dr. Tata, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. This is in the laundryette. I said to him, I'm so glad you mentioned Africa because Gambia is a place I want to visit. So he laughed and he said, well, that's strange. I am a construction engineer and I am building buildings in Gambia.
Oh my. Okay.
He showed me on his phone his latest construction. He is building buildings and selling them in Gambia. On top of that, he has got a pineapple company in Ghana, a farm. He's a farmer.
And he was being ridiculed because of a coin, a pound, to wash his clothes. How ridiculous.
Believe it? While we were sitting there, he said, I've got to call my wife and tell her there are good people. There are good people in the world.
Absolutely.
He called his wife and on the phone, he was talking to her and he has all the latest technology. I've never seen a phone with earphones, with ear muff, big, that you can talk in. You don't even need cords. And the person can hear you. And I was shocked. I've never seen this before. And then we were talking and I said, when I go to Gambia, I need to have a very good computer or a laptop. I said, is the something book. There's a something book
notebook
that you can buy. That's sorry?
A notebook.
Yes. And I said,
Okay.
I need to get a notebook. Could you advise me? He said, that is what I have with me here. And he showed it to me. It's an Apple notebook. I said, I know it's about 1,000 pounds. He said, no,
Exactly.
it's 2,000 pounds.
Oh my God. Oh, sister, we'll continue the conversation. Let me pick this other call. And yeah. Oh, hello. I think he's already connected. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Susan.
Yes.
Greetings to you and beloved Professor Small, calling from not quite the village of Harlem, a little bit further uptown, Washington Heights. I just wanted to weigh in on everything that Professor Smalls has been sharing, and I wanted to make the statement of my understanding is that this beast cannot be defeated, must be defeated on the battlefield, which is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are other things that must be done, but I don't think there's any other way you can really confront the challenges, particularly with all the forces amassing from every corner of the planet to come and ravage Africa. I think our challenge really is for the children, the young people, the elders to really mobilize themselves, and that's a heavy lift. I understand, and it doesn't come without being preceded by political education. But it's my firm conviction that you really gonna have to fight this beast. He's not going anywhere. If you keep playing with him, he gonna think you're gonna play with him forever. I just would like Professor Smalls to weigh in on that, and I will hang up and listen on the air.
Yeah. He's already out of the show just now. But is there a way that you can come on the show? We would have to arrange it, because we must find a way, and I don't think there's a single strategy. Like you're saying, we would have to confront this beast. Do you have any solutions that you think? I mean, I will host you next week or something like that. Are you available? Because honestly, when I hear voices, particularly of mothers, of women like us, I'm just excited that we should.
I am not a leader. I am not a standout person. I am not a spokesperson or somebody to be in the limelight. I'm just a person with common sense that understands you're going to have to fight these people. They're not leaving. They're not leaving if you don't fight them. And then you can talk all day long if you want to. You can talk up one side and down the other side, but they're not going until you fight them. And when you fight them, they'll go.
Okay.
Because they won't win. They can't win.
Now, probably,
if you
sister.
show them that their lives have no value, they will go. They just will keep playing you as long as they can tell you what to think, and you keep regurgitating what they've told you. No, you got to tell them. No, it's toe to toe, even Steven on the battle gun. We got a gun. You got a gun. Let's go. And
Wow.
let's go.
Wow. I hear that. I will still get back after this show with you. We have to put on a way how we want to put, what are the steps that we need to fight on. I do agree. It's been decades. I don't see anything that we just work. We educated. We everything that we want. But there's just one thing that we're not doing. Maybe fighting. Yes. But let's see, how do we fight? Right.
Sis, I love you.
I love you too, my sis. And we're just looking how we can make this whole thing liberate our own. Sis, I'm connecting with you after the show right now. Okay.
All right. I think the women have to be the vanguard.
Yes, I also think so. Let us talk in the lobby. We put out some women together, like even the sister that was talking, I don't know her phone ran out, and let's see how we can punch this, and we can do it. The women have always done it anyway.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sis.
Sounds wonderful.
Nice weekend. We see us. Thank you so much. Yeah, bye. Hi, my dear sister who was online. I don't know, somehow I lost you. Oh, I think because the other sister, your sister, just called in with the direct line. But we are closing right now. Yes, because we have to tank up the energy, refresh ourselves, and we see ourselves here tomorrow. So let's meet tomorrow, same time, with our youths, and then we begin to tell them it's time to fight. And we should all be getting ready to fight. So good night. We see ourselves tomorrow. Pan African Daily TV. Continue to like, subscribe, and share. Bye-bye.
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.